Okay, guys, I've had some people that have been wanting me to analyze or comment on the Amber Guyger trial up in Dallas. Now, this is the Dallas police officer that entered the wrong apartment and killed the resident about a year ago. I think that a good place to start with this, I have been watching the trial, and the prosecutor's opening statements really hit on a lot of interesting stuff. So that's what I want to go to here. And I'm not going to make you guys live through all of it, but I'm going to play some of it, and I'll hit on the high points for you. So here we go.
Now, the state of Texas, we've been waiting to present our evidence to the Dallas County jury for more than a year now, so I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I want to introduce the complainant to you. This is Botham Jean. By all accounts, Bo was a wonderful, decent, kind man. On September the 6th of
Now remember, when this all happened, the Dallas Police Department vilified Bo because they found a small amount of marijuana in his apartment. They made him sound like he was some big bad dude.
2018, Bo was 26 years old, and he was sitting inside his apartment, the sanctuary of his own home at the Southside Flats. He was doing no harm to anybody, which was his wife. As a matter of fact, the evidence is going to show you that he was sitting in his living room in shorts and a t-shirt, watching TV, eating a bowl of vanilla ice cream. What any one of us would have been doing. When all of a sudden, Amber Guyger comes through his front door, uninvited. The light from the hallway must have flooded his apartment. The noise from the door must have scared him to death. As Bo was trying to get up off the couch to find out what this intruder is doing coming into his home, she is leveling off her gun, having acquired her target, and she shoots at him twice.
Okay, so this shoots at him twice thing is important. A lot of law enforcement is taught to double tap. Basically, it is to fire two shots in quick succession, all right? And then you try to assess the situation. Do you need more shots, or is your target down? This has been the training for years, many years. Unfortunately, that training is starting to go away, and now they just train you to shoot. Just basically do a mag dump. Just shoot till your mag's empty, and then look at the situation while you're reloading. And if the guy's still moving, shoot him some more. It's ridiculous the amount of shots that are being fired in shootings by police these days. Now, keep in mind, it's something I've been meaning to comment on in a video and just hadn't gotten around to it. So, if you get shot, say you get shot in the lower chest, right here. All right. The natural reaction for a person who's shot is to grab for the wound. Problem is, a police officer shoots you and you grab for that wound, he's going to say, oh, he's going for a weapon. And here comes the mag dump. Boom, 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 boom. 18, 20 rounds instead of just that one that got you. Law enforcement needs to be trained that a natural reaction to being shot is to grab at the wound. Maybe we could minimize or cut back on the number of shots fired, because each of those bullets is a liability, because not all of them are going to strike the target. They can pass through walls, ricochet, enter cars, residences. The possibility for killing an innocent person is so great that it is unbelievable that in urban areas, the number of shots fired by law enforcement is just mind-boggling. But let's go back to the video.
opportunity for de-escalation, no opportunity for him to surrender. Bang, bang, rapid, double tap. One of these bullets, we don't know which one hit him. We know there were 2 shots. One of them landed where it was aimed. The other one goes past Bo, goes through his back wall into the darkness of the city behind. Thank God nobody else was hurt, because it's all residential behind there. The other bullet takes a very remarkable downward course, which is going to be indicative of the trajectory.
Now listen, this is very, very important. Okay, the trajectory of the bullet that struck this guy is very telling. Okay, so pay attention to what this guy's saying.
That's going to be very important. It's Bo in the chest just above his left nipple. The path of that bullet goes down into his heart, does absolutely devastating damage. Goes through his lung.
For those of you that don't know what a hollow point does, okay, so you've seen hollow point bullets. They got the little round hole in the nose of the bullet. Well, what occurs when that hollow point, that hole, fills with fluid is it creates dynamic pressure on the cone of the bullet and causes it to spread out and open like the petals of a flower. Those petals are sharp, and literally anything in their path that they touch, they rip and shred and destroy. And they're not just traveling like this, they're spinning like a saw. So the amount of damage that a hollow point is capable of doing, even a small caliber one, I think Dallas PD issues 9mm or requires 9mm as a caliber for carry, but that is sufficient caliber that once those bullets are 35 caliber. Okay, once they expand, they end up somewhere around 43, 44 caliber. So that's basically a half of an inch of sharp metal petals that are ripping through your body and destroying material. I have not seen the coroner's report for this case. If I get a chance, I'll pull it and look at it. But I have no problem believing that the wound track is devastating, especially if it caught anything to do with the heart. Sorry, let's go back.
Goes through his stomach, goes through his intestine, until it finally comes to a rest in what's called the psoas muscle, which is halfway between his stomach and his back, in a dense pack of muscle. This path is very revealing because it is consistent with the fact that Bo was getting up from a seated position and facing the door.
Now, I don't know how many of you guys stand around eating ice cream. I typically don't stand when I'm eating ice cream. I have a seat. Amber Guyger testified that Bo was not sitting on the couch when she came in, that he was standing in the back of the apartment in front of a window, and he was silhouetted against the window when she fired. Now that window is, if I recall correctly, 3 or 4 feet to the left of where her bullet that missed landed. Okay, so it is very difficult to believe that he was over there where she claims he was, given the location of the missed bullet and the type of trajectory that the main bullet took. Additionally, when he fell to the ground, he was between the coffee table and the couch, not out between the coffee table and the TV in the room, which is where he would have fallen had he been in front of the window.
As Amber Guyger was coming into his home, the only other reasonable position that would explain that kind of a path is equally as innocuous for Bo. It would place him in a cowering position, hiding behind a 3-foot wall, a few feet in front of him that separated him from the shooter.
Okay, the problem with that, and this guy's just trying to make his case, I understand, but if Bo had been standing by the wall that he's talking about, after he was shot, he would likely have gone down right there. I can tell you, when a bullet travels through the heart, your body loses hydraulic pressure very fast. I mean, we're talking a second that you have to still move. Once that hydraulic pressure is gone, you're down, and that's what they are intended to do. So this guy is kind of misleading when he's talking about how he might have been hiding behind this wall. I have no doubt, based on what the evidence and that I've seen from the trial, that Bo was sitting on his couch when she entered and was getting up at the time that he was shot.
Now, the effect of this bullet was catastrophic. Bo had, as in medical examiner parlance, had a couple of steps of purposeful movement left in his body before he fell to the ground. And there he lay, on his back, in his home, bleeding to death, alone with his killer. So you might be asking yourself, as did we, how does Amber Guyger come to be standing over the dying Botham Jean, an unarmed man in his own apartment, having just shot him? Well, in order for us to get that answer, we began to work right away, reconstructing her day on September the 6th. So, we're going to get into that in a second, but I'm going to tell you the short answer is simply this. In the last 10 minutes of Bo's life, Amber Guyger made a series of unreasonable errors and unreasonable decisions and unreasonable choices. The kind of choices and decisions that only she could have stopped the errors from happening again and again and again, and she didn't. And for her errors, for her omissions, Botham paid the ultimate price. September the 6th, 2018 for Amber Guyger started pretty much like any other Thursday. She lived in the Southside Flats apartment, the same apartment complex as Bo. She lived in apartment 1378. He lived in apartment 1478.
I'm going to move this ahead a little bit.
It's not unusual at all for members of the CRT team to be working overtime. You're going to hear from the evidence that it's not uncommon in police work for officers to work long hours. They receive the training, hopefully they're in the physical condition, and they got the mental acuity to do that job. She had proven her worth. That is actually a very distinguished position for her to have made it onto the CRT team.
Yeah, I wonder how she got on that team.
Now, they already know, this team, that there's a very good chance that overtime on this particular day is going to happen. And it's not like overtime like what we have to face, where we dread it. Officers often seek out overtime opportunities because the pay is very lucrative.
Pay is very lucrative. They get time and a half when they do this, all right? It is more money than working even an extra job, which Amber Guyger, if I recall correctly, did not have any extra jobs at this time. Okay, time and a half is what they're getting. And it's not like they're out there really working hard, okay? In this particular case, she spent the overtime hours babysitting a couple guys that they had arrested earlier in the day. So, get back to the video here.
Amber Guyger was one of them. On this particular day, they know because SWAT has approached the team and said that they want to go in and arrest some robbers. And they've asked for the help of CRT. And so sure enough, this plan becomes a reality. So for the most part in the morning of September the 6th, Amber Guyger and her partner, Martin Rivera, they're trying to lay low so that they don't get into something that will make them not be able to contribute. Around noon, they meet at the central substation where they're briefed by SWAT on who's going to do what. About 1 o'clock p.m., Amber Guyger and the rest of her CRT team are out on Elsie Faye Higgins Road in a perimeter capacity when SWAT goes into the home and does in fact arrest, I believe it was 3 individuals, notorious robbers. Good job to the police. Thank God no one was hurt on their end or on the citizens' end. 3 people taken into custody.
Quick note. The Dallas Police Department generally does not use no-knock warrants. In that arrest, it is later in the testimony in the trial, they did the surround and pound. They cut off the residence, surrounded it, set up an inner perimeter, outer perimeter, and then they used a speaker to call in to the people to surrender. It took about an hour to get them to surrender, but they did. Okay? No-knock warrants are warrants to murder. That's it. No-knock warrants get people hurt. The vast majority of the time, they are not needed.
Again, Amber Guyger and the entire CRT team, they weren't in the home, but they played a valuable role in making sure no other cars or people came up on the scene. Right around 2:15 p.m., CRT was asked to transport those 3 prisoners to Dallas Police Department so that detectives can interrogate those individuals and get evidence against them so that they can be prosecuted. Ladies and gentlemen, that is common police practice, not just with the Dallas Police Department, but every police agency in this jurisdiction. When you have a person who is suspected of being part of a crime or being the criminal who actually committed the crime, those individuals are arrested, they're put in handcuffs, they're put in police cars, they're taken to the police department, they're interrogated, and they're put in jail.
Okay, he's making a point here, all right? When somebody commits a crime, they are arrested, taken to the police station, interrogated, and then taken to jail. He's making a point here. He's going to get to this in a minute. And it has to do with the special treatment that was afforded Amber Guyger during her arrest.
Except for, as it turns out, police officers. Police officers don't get treated like that. And we're going to talk about that more in trial.
Now, I'm going to say, when you have an officer involved shooting on duty, okay, that is a different circumstance than when you have an officer involved shooting that is an off-duty shooting. Off-duty shootings should be treated the same way they treat you and I. There should be no special privileges. There should be no blue privilege. They should be treated exactly the same way you and I are treated.
So from about 2:30 until 7:45, the CRT team is at Dallas Police Headquarters while the detectives are interviewing these suspects. Let me talk to you about what that's like. Because here's the point that I'm going to make. Amber Guyger worked a long shift that day. She worked a 13-and-a-half-hour shift. But I want you to understand.
How many of you have ever worked 12-hour shifts? She worked 13 and a half hours. How many of you have ever worked a 12-hour shift? Think about that. Were you so exhausted? I mean, you probably did some actual manual labor. And at the end of that 12-hour shift, how exhausted were you? Were you so exhausted that you'd walk into the wrong apartment and murder somebody? I think I remember once that I worked a shift that for a rush job. I think we worked 28 hours straight, and it wasn't heavy duty manual labor, but it was pretty physically challenging. 28 hours straight to get that job knocked out. And I don't think at the end of that I would have walked into the wrong apartment and let alone murdered anybody. I can't. I remember being very, very exhausted after that. But I still drove, 50 minutes to get home and visited with my wife and kids before I laid down and went to sleep. So, there you have it.
She wasn't laying asphalt. That's a hard job too. Being a police officer is a hard job. But I don't want to give the impression that she was running around chasing criminals all day long. Most of the day she spent at the Dallas Police Headquarters, which is an office building. Like any office building that we're all familiar with. Climate controlled, food, TVs, break rooms, computers, allowed to play on your phones, text, call. Now, her job, and the job of any officer who is sitting on a prisoner, they need to sit outside the interview room and make sure those prisoners don't act a fool. So it can be dangerous. I take nothing away from that, and I give them their credit. On this day, however, apparently nothing went wrong. It looks like the interviews were conducted safely. Everybody got to go. But she was there until about 7:45 p.m. After those interviews were over, 4 of the members of the team, one person had to leave, Martin Rivera. He elected not to partake in all of the overtime.
Martin Rivera is her partner. He's also her friends with benefit. Okay, this is important as well.
Because he had some sort of an event that he wanted to go to. He was allowed to go. 4 of the members end up taking.
The event he wanted to go to was a baseball game at one of his kids. He's married with children, and he went to a baseball game, softball game that one of his kids was playing in.
The 3 arrested individuals to Dallas County Jail, the building that's right behind this one. That also is kind of a mundane job of just kind of transferring your prisoner from the police department to the county sheriff. The prisoners were taken into custody. Amber Guyger and the 3 remaining members of her team did their police reports. They got their arrest approved, and by about 9 p.m., she was heading home. Another member, remember I told you it was 5 to begin with, that had turned to 4 when Martin Rivera left? Now it's down to 3 because Officer Bruce, another member of CRT, he had the opportunity to work an off-duty job. If you'll recall, I said overtime is a very lucrative position. Off-duty jobs pay even more. So he took advantage of that and left.
Okay, he is not correct. Depending upon your pay grade, off-duty jobs may pay more, okay? Young officers just starting out, off-duty jobs will pay more. When you're the low man on a totem pole, at the department, off-duty jobs pay more. After about 4 or 5 years of service, you're making enough money that time and a half pays much more. And so he's misleading in what he's saying there.
3 of them, Guyger, Hellengard, and I believe McPherson, they leave the jail. They head back to the Southeast Patrol Substation in Pleasant Grove. She gets back there shortly before 9:30. She docks her body-worn camera in the recharging station, and she fills out her overtime card. Her overtime card is going to be admitted into evidence. Now, it is going to say that she wrote it down, 8 until 9:45. That's not accurate. She worked 8 until 9:30. It's not a big deal. I just pointed out because it is a difference, and I don't want you to think that we're misrepresenting it to you. Apparently, it's common practice to add in an extra 15 minutes in case they have to remove gear from cars. She didn't do anything untoward, but in fact, she left about 9:30. As she's leaving the substation at 9:30 p.m., she sends a message, a text message. Actually, it's a Snapchat message with a text associated with it to her partner, Martin Rivera. And she says, "Want to touch." So I think it's important for me to take a moment and let you know something else.
Okay, remember, she's having an affair with Martin Rivera. Now, they do not have the photos that went with that text message that is associated. Snapchat automatically deletes after a few minutes. I forget exactly how long it is, but it doesn't stay very long. And so she sent him, I'm guessing, a picture of her boobs, and says, "Do you want to touch?" This is all giving you an idea of where her head is. Okay, so pay attention. Does have some of the text messages from her phone that he's going to get into here.
Amber Guyger had been with CRT about 1.5 years. Most of that time she worked with Martin Rivera. Their relationship was more than just professional. For about the last year, they had been intimate. And that relationship kind of ebbed and flowed. Coming upon more recently into September, it looks like that intimate part of their relationship was kind of ramping back up. But we know from the text messages, starting at about 5:55 p.m., Martin had already left. Remember I told you he had an event to go to? Starting about 5:55 p.m., they begin a text exchange. She's sitting on the prisoner at headquarters. He's wherever it is that he is. And a text exchange begins. This is just a sample. I need you to know this. They were talking multiple times throughout the evening by text, by Snapchat, and by MMS messages. I can't show you the images that they were sending back and forth to each other because the Snapchat application actually deletes those as part of its programming. I also can't show you the MMS images that were sent over her phone because they were deleted a day or two after this particular offer.
Deleted. Now, this is interesting because her phone, if they thought that there was something on that phone, it should have been seized. And based on what I've seen that was occurring at the crime scene, that phone should have been seized to protect evidence. Who she called, messages she was sending, you know, it didn't take but just a minute to figure out that there were some improprieties in her story. And so they did not seize it. MMS's messages are multimedia service messages. They're pics, photographs. Okay, she's sending photographs back and forth with this guy. In trial, her testimony is very interesting about what was contained in those photographs.
And we were never able to recover them. But here's a select portion, because I think it's very important for you folks to know that after a 13-and-a-half-hour shift, Amber Guyger did not have plans just to go home and crash or take it easy. There were plans that particular evening.
They were getting together to hook up. Okay, that's the short version. She's hollering about how exhausted she was, but listen to the text messages and understand that she had company coming. That's why she's in a hurry.
Plans that were hatched about 5:55 between her and Martin Rivera. He writes to her, "When can I come over?" She replies, "You can come over after this." Referring to an image that had come across earlier. She indicates to him, "Super horny today too." He replies, "Me too." Then there were a bunch of other conversations going on throughout the night. He was checking in with her every hour and a half, and then she lets him know at 9:29:06. She sends him a text letting him know that she's barely walking out of the police station, followed by this indication, "Do you want to touch?" All right. By implication, clearly, we believe that there was some event, some date, whatever you want to call it, planned for after this call was over, based on their conversations that was exchanged with text. At 9:38 p.m., Martin Rivera calls Amber Guyger's phone, and they begin a 16-minute and 44-second telephone conversation.
Okay, this is important.
She is talking to Martin Rivera on the phone, from the substation all the way till she gets to her apartment complex, and even while she parks in the garage. She actually goes into the garage, a controlled, gated environment, and we know that she actually pulls over. She doesn't go and park. Whatever the conversation was with her and Martin Rivera required her to pull off the lane of traffic in her parking garage and give him full attention. Maybe she had to write something down, maybe it was an intense conversation. What we know is that she pulled off. Now, Martin Rivera recalls this conversation simply being about her filling him in on the details of what happened after he left. All right? That's what he recalls it being.
What details? What is there to fill you in on? The detectives were questioning the guy. How long does that take to... Yeah, dude, hey, they confessed, or they didn't confess, and we took them over to county jail, dropped them off. My shift was over. I went and loaded up and went home. This is not a distracting conversation. This is not something that you really got to get deep into. There's something else in that conversation. Plans for the evening. Can you send me a quick pic of this or that? Yada, yada, yada.
I submit to you there was something much more about that conversation. Because prior to that conversation, Amber Guyger was able to effectively do her job all the way until she left. When she got to the police station, she was able to effectively put her body cam up. She was effectively able to put in her overtime card. She was effectively able to get into her car, drive away, carry on a conversation, find her way home, take her gear in, put her gear out. She was operating like a normal person. After
She's horny. Leave her alone.
this conversation with Martin Rivera, there is a marked difference. That conversation ends at 9:55:21. At this point here, she gets back into the lane of traffic. But what's important, so I'm fixing to go through some of the stuff that happens in a short period of time after that. At 9:55:21, Botham has less than 3 minutes and 44 seconds to live. What happens in this 3 minutes and 44 seconds? Amber Guyger fails to park on the floor that she's supposed to. She drives up to the 4th floor and she parks there instead. That can happen. And I'm going to tell you folks, I'm not trying to be nitpicky. Any number of these things in isolation can be explained. It's a cumulative total in the comparison of her respective attentiveness before and after this call.
It's the totality of the situation. How many times have you heard that? Consider the totality of the situation. She was functioning 100% up until that conversation when she pulled over. What was said, what was exchanged, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows, and they didn't address it in testimony. But there was something in that was so distracting to her that after that she couldn't function.
She parks on the wrong floor. She actually backs into a parking spot in the parking garage on the 4th floor. From her vantage point where she is parked, all the way until she gets out of her truck, she drives a white Dodge pickup truck, and all the way forward until she walks into a skyway that connects to the apartment complex itself, you can see it's an open air garage. You can see the elevation 180 degrees around. You can see the roof line of the apartment complex that you don't see from the 3rd floor. It is a completely different perspective. She fails to recognize that. Just like she fails to recognize that she's parked on the 4th floor. She then enters, she goes past a skyway that is also open right to her left and right, where she could look if she chose to, either side, and see, this isn't right. She either doesn't do that or it doesn't register either. She has a key fob that will allow her access to anywhere in the apartment complex. She uses that to walk into the 4th floor hallway. She has to go down 2 very long hallways now in order to get to what she thinks is her apartment. But in fact, she's walking towards Bo. It's a long walk. For someone as young and fit as her, maybe a minute or two. But a minute or two is actually a long time for you to keep on missing repeatedly obvious signs that something is not right. She walks past 16 different apartments and fails to register the number 4 on any single one of them. Next to the door at this apartment complex, there's a lighted sign. And on the lighted sign is the apartment number. It's a little bit different than most apartments. Everyone that I've lived in growing up, they always have the numbers on the door. But she lived there for 2 months. She knew where the apartment numbers were located. And she walked past 16 of those without recognizing. Well, maybe the explanation for that is she doesn't look straight ahead when she's walking. Maybe she looks down. All right? There are floor mat differences. Not major, but enough that you would notice that something isn't right. As she gets to the end of the 1st hallway, there's a sharp left turn. On the 3rd floor, Miss Bly, a neighbor of hers, who lives in that corner apartment, she's got this really pretty decorative planter. It's big. It's tall. It's obvious. At least twice a day, you would think, for the last 2 months, Amber Guyger has walked past that decorative urn.
Now, let's think about that for a second. Could you walk down a hallway for 2 months, a couple times a day at least, and walk past this decorative urn, and then one day when it's missing, would that get your attention? Would you think about that for a minute? Would you look at that? Would you go, hey, that's weird, and maybe look at the apartment numbers?
On this particular evening, it's not there because she's on the wrong floor. Doesn't register. Whatever is on her mind after that conversation has consumed her attention entirely. And she's missing obvious things. She then goes down the rest of the hallway because then she turns left. And she's walking up on Beau's apartment, 1478. And this is the one I really want y'all to hear. Amber Guyger has no floor mat in front of her door. Amber Guyger has nothing but the concrete floor. Gray, concrete floor that looks like the rest of the floor. Botham Jean wanted his apartment to be very noticeable. And he took steps to make sure that happened. In front of Botham's apartment is this extremely obvious bright red floor mat.
Okay, so you missed the urn. Could you miss that floor mat? I mean, it doesn't get any brighter than that. And these hallways are not dark. They are not dark. They are very, very brightly lit. This is a fairly new apartment complex. And in the testimony later, they talk about how bright the hallway is, and that if you entered a dark apartment through the door, enough light would spill through that it lit the apartment up enough for you to be able to see people in there, yada, yada, yada. But look at that floor mat. How do you walk up to that door and not know you're in the wrong place? I think he hit on it a minute ago. Whatever that conversation she had with Martin Rivera was such a great distraction to her that the world just didn't exist for her anymore. Just did not exist.
Right in front of his door. I want to reiterate. Amber Guyger had no floor mat. She walked right up and stepped on top of this as she entered and placed her key fob into the deadbolt lock of Botham Jean's home. Now, unfortunately for Beau, it would seem that he didn't lock his door when he got home that night.
Now, here's something I don't have a problem believing. The doors in this apartment are the hinges are spring hinges, so that they close the door automatically after you when you come and go. I have no problem believing that door maybe didn't latch all the way, and so when she inserted her key, pushing on the door, it popped open. I don't have a problem believing that. It's everything that led up to that, and then she enters, and by her own testimony, she did not identify herself as a police officer. She merely pulled her pistol, pointed at the guy, and hollered at him to put his hands up. And then fired the 2 rounds. That's her testimony, and I'll actually do that in another video. But let me let this guy finish. I'm not going to put you through all the rest of the 8 or 9 minutes of this, but we're just going to knock a little bit out here real quick.
We even recognize that it is a possibility that heavy metal door, when it shut, hit the plate and may have not actually seen it, so that you could actually just push the door open. But we know for a fact he didn't lock the door. Not that he should have to, but on this particular occasion it sure would have been good had he done it. Now, one of 2 things happened. Either Amber Guyger immediately assumed that there was an intruder inside what she thought was her apartment, and she decided to go in and engage. Or number 2, she completely failed to recognize the reality that she locked her door that morning. And like everything else, she just keeps on going on, missing all these clues. And she enters into Beau's apartment.
This is not tactically sound. It is not what they are trained to do. All right, if she popped that door open and thought there was a burglar there, she had a police radio with her, she had a cell phone with her. The appropriate thing to do is to withdraw to a position of cover and watch the door. The guy's not going out the balcony, not 3 or 4 floors up. There's only one way in, one way out for this guy. You retreat, take cover, call for backup. This is what police officers do it all the time. They don't go to a burglary and one man walk in the door. That's not what they do. They call for backup. When they go out on a burglary call, they'll call if they see something that looks like there's entry, they call for backup. And they wait for that backup. This is procedure. It's not procedure to enter by yourself. This is drilled into their head. This is an officer safety issue.
Once she enters into Bo's apartment and she sees him, because she definitely saw him because she shot him exactly where she's trained to shoot an individual. Either she thought there was an intruder before, or once she recognized there was what she thought was an intruder after she entered, she departed from her training and her orders as a Dallas Police Department police officer. Their orders and her training are that if you come across a person that is inside of a habitation, like a burglar, if you have the opportunity to safely do so, you are to take a position of cover and concealment and contain that individual and call for backup. These rules are made and designed primarily because that maximizes the safety of the police officer. Incidentally, it also maximizes the safety of the person on the other side of the door. She didn't do that. She makes entry into Bo's apartment. Either she shot him so quickly that she wasn't able to perceive, or she continued to not perceive the fact that his apartment is decorated very differently than hers. She has a huge table, like a half table, I would call it a baker's rack, that is right in her line of sight as that door opens. Bo has nothing like that. God bless Bo, but he was messy. His apartment was cluttered, the whole cabin, the kitchen counter, covered with stuff. Hers is very neat. And it's not just the sensory details that she's failing to notice unreasonably. She's missing other sensory clues as well. Bo smoked marijuana. His sister's going to talk about why. He does it in his home. His home smells of marijuana. Hers presumably doesn't.
Presumably.
She fails to recognize that. All of these things that she's aware of, she just doesn't let them get here. And that failure cost Bo his life. So now Bo is lying, bleeding to death on his floor. She shot him. She calls 911. I'm going to play that 911 call for you. And initially, I felt sympathy for her, and you may too. That's fine. Understand this. You're hearing one side of the story, and you're hearing an unchallenged story. But I think that 911 call is going to be important, because I think when you listen critically to what she is saying, you are going to hear that she is as concerned or more concerned about how this is going to affect her than this poor guy on the floor next to her. I think this 911 call is going to do two other things that are vitally important. Number one, there had not yet been an opportunity for her to embellish her story. It was too fast. There had not yet been an opportunity for her to think of how I could state what happened in better light for me. And in that 911 call, she tells the call taker exactly why she shot both. She said, I shot a guy thinking it was my apartment. I shot a guy thinking it was my apartment.
All right, I think that's enough of that. The case is very interesting. If you have time, all you have to just go to YouTube and put in the search bar Amber Guyger. And I'm going to get her testimony and review it as well in the next video. But I wanted you guys to get an idea of where this is to open up, or just to begin. And I think that's going to be it. So hope that you guys will watch the next part, and be safe, and I will see you again soon.